you.
Okay, thank you. My name is Cindy. I'm with KEXAC. I will be the moderator for this session, I guess. We are on our second concurrent session of the day, and this lasts from 12:30 to 1:30 p.m. And it is updates and instructions for completing DJJ Medicaid Monitoring Forms. And our speaker is Dr. Greg Finkbonner. Just want to let you all know that if you need to chime in or speak up, you are able to unmute yourself, but when you're not speaking, we will be muting everyone just because we get feedback and it can make the audio mess up. Also, there is a chat feature. So if you click on the chat box at the bottom of the Zoom window, you can see where people can type in messages or questions or anything like that. Also, I just wanted to let you know that up at the top of your Zoom screen, there should be a way for you all to choose your speaker view or how you see the videos. So you can switch that around so you can watch Dr. Finkbonner as he is going through his presentation. So I will go ahead and send it over to him. And if you have any questions, feel free to chime in or send a question on the message chat. All right.
All right, thank you, Cindy. And just so that you know, this is the first time that I've presented on on a Zoom like this. So please be patient with me as I go through it. Hopefully I can switch back and forth to get to the documents. So as Cindy said, my name is Dr. Greg Finkbonner, and I am the Justice Program Administrator in the Education Branch for the Department of Juvenile Justice. I have been with DJJ for the last 5 years. Before that time, I'd served as the Director of the Academics at the University of Phoenix at the Louisville campus. My educational background includes a bachelor's in education, a master's in school administration, a doctorate in educational leadership. My current role is that I am the monitor for Medicaid for both DJJ and contracted day treatment programs, which means I'm responsible for overseeing 18 contracted day treatments and 6 DJJ operated day treatments across the Commonwealth. In order to meet the requirements and the expectations for Medicaid, these monitoring programs are required. So why is this important? Why is Medicaid monitoring important? Why is the documentation important? I want to show you this quick video. It should take about 5 minutes, and hopefully this will work here. Start that.
I got my first arrest when I was 11 years old. You know, you don't go from banging on the streets of Atlanta, Georgia with a life expectancy of 15 years to Commissioner of Juvenile Justice accidentally. You go there because somebody had the courage to believe more and give you the opportunity to become more. And that's what we have to do. That's our real work.
Senate Bill 200 is adopted. Since the late 1990s, the rate at which juveniles are arrested for violent crime has been cut in half. And so is the rate at which they're held in juvenile correctional facilities. State policy leaders are now poised to accelerate and lock in these trends toward more public safety and less taxpayer expense. The time is right for juvenile justice reform. We're living in a time now where the opportunity has never been greater. We need to recognize that we can do a better job with our kids. States from Georgia to Kentucky to Hawaii are taking a fresh look at juvenile justice because it was clear that the status quo was not working. Kentucky was spending its money in all the wrong ways. We weren't getting a good return on investment. We weren't getting results. We weren't getting the best outcomes for our most troubled children. When I started to look at the type of kids that we had at the correctional facility, I realized that the overwhelming majority of them were not at risk of public safety.
Like many judges, we were committing kids by default.
We were putting almost as many kids in some type of detention facility for missing school as we were for committing a crime.
You're forced because we don't have those local community interventions to commit them to the state. We were spending a lot of money on detention, particularly for low-level offenders, when we see that that's not a productive or an effective way to invest in the lives of those kids.
Research shows that juvenile correctional facilities generally fail to produce better outcomes than alternative sanctions, cost much more, can actually increase reoffending for certain youth.
Putting kids in placement in secure facilities, lockup, does not actually deter crime.
Longer stays don't seem to show any positive effects in terms of reducing the rate of rearrest. At some point, we should have a way of thinking about why we're keeping an adolescent in an institution for a longer time period. And if there are reasons to do that, then let's be explicit about that and figure out what we're getting out of it.
To get better results, states are reducing the number of youth sent to correctional facilities and reinvesting a portion of the savings into programs and policies that reduce recidivism.
One of the ways that the states can really respond effectively is to be able to sort through kids in terms of low risk, medium risk, high risk kids, and to focus those resources effectively on the adolescents who are going to present the highest risk of public safety problems. We require judges to apply risk assessment instruments before they can commit kids to ensure that the lower risk kids are not committed to the state.
We're going to see a dramatic shift in the way we serve young people.
These reforms, first of all, are going to keep kids who otherwise would have been sent to a youth prison to remain in the community and receive the type of interventions that need to happen in their home.
There will be a significantly reduced number of actual court cases filed. They will be addressed appropriately with social services on the front end.
To better protect public safety, you need to spend those dollars at the front end of the system versus the back end of the system.
Everything in juvenile justice is about intervention. Prevent a child learning further criminal behaviors, and you prevent a future adult criminal.
These reforms are not only making communities safer, but they're saving states money because placing youth in residential facilities is the most expensive correctional option.
When you can divert, you can avoid sending a low-level child to detention for $100,000 a year, those savings mount up quickly. In the state of Hawaii, it's costing approximately $199,000 a year to incarcerate the youth.
The bottom line is that we have passed a bill that gets better outcomes for children and does so at a lower cost for the taxpayer. As a result of these reforms, we have realized cost savings. In Georgia, for example, we have already shut down 2 facilities because we are no longer committing low-risk offenders.
States are getting to good public policy by looking at the data. Across all branches of government and the partisan divide, state leaders are coming together to assess their systems and find solutions.
The collaboration on this bill is key. We turned no one away.
The task force was vital to the process because it gave us that credibility and that unified voice to speak with when rolling out a package of legislative reforms.
These reforms are grounded in research and the public supports them.
The public has always been more positive in this orientation toward youthful offenders.
85% of voters say they are not concerned whether juvenile offenders are sent to correctional facilities or how long they stay there. What matters is reducing the likelihood of future crime.
I really think in some way we're kind of coming back around to what the public kind of expected all the time from the juvenile justice system.
State leaders have successfully adopted reforms that will change the direction of juvenile justice policy and the lives of young people.
For every child that we convert from the criminal justice system and decrease the chances they'll ever enter it, that's a policy win in so many ways.
We go into public service to do those things. That's why we're there.
We continue on this trajectory. The only children that come to the deep end of our system will be the ones that absolutely need it. And every other child in the Commonwealth and hopefully in the nation will move forward to their greatest successes.
All right. So you may have recognized a few faces in there, a few names, and I know it's a little bit dated, but I wanted to bring that back to you, just kind of a reminder of what we're doing. So a couple of bullet points. Kentucky was one of 3 states leading the way for juvenile justice reform. States were locking up low-level offenders. These are like status offenders. I mean, people, students that have missed school, they end up in a youth development center or detention. And these weren't showing any positive results. Kentucky passed that Senate Bill 200. I know that it's not perfect, but we do know that it removed the low-level offenders and it limited the amount of time a youth would stay in a youth development center. It then reserved the resources to be used in the community. The focus was on interventions instead of locking up youth. So that kind of brings us to my next slide, which is about the purpose of Medicaid and a monitoring visit. 2019 and 2020 was when these forms were, I shouldn't say newly developed, they were more put into updated, if you will. And I realize that DJJ knows that community-based services are best for youth. Instead of being committed, instead of being court-ordered into a youth development center, they could be sent to a day treatment center, where they could be provided counseling services and an education, which is the best ways that we know of and what research shows in helping youth succeed. So we at DJJ can bill Medicaid for counseling and education services. So while attending a day treatment program, youth receive a service, and even for one day, we can count those students. One day out of the month, that is. Moreover, by doing this, DJJ must ensure that youth receive the best possible services, both in counseling and in education. And that's another reason why that this is so important. Okay, our objectives for this particular session is that I'm going to show you how to complete the new individual treatment plans and the review forms and write an effective treatment plans for the youth. Excuse me. Also, I'm going to show you how to complete the transition plans and the treatment team summary forms. I'm going to show you how to complete the new individual client records, or that review process, which has changed a little bit, you may have noticed, and then go over some best practices for a Medicaid monitoring visit. And then at the end, there will be a time for question and answer and for handling documentation during this COVID-19 pandemic. All right, so we'll start with the first one, which is the individual treatment plan sample. So I'm just going to switch over here to a sample so we can talk about that. Okay, here you see general page is what it's called. And at the top, it just says John Doe is the juvenile name and then a juvenile ID number. Typically, they do start with a 1 and a 0 maybe, but if they're not a DJJ student or youth, they will not have a number, so you could just leave that one blank. The service entry date, that would be the date that they enter your program. The development date, that is the date of when this treatment plan was developed or is developed. The next one is the committing offense and the severity. So in this case, it says felony. That's, again, that's optional only for DJJ youth. Would that be completed? And then there's the anticipated exit date. So when you think or project that your youth, that youth will exit your program and go back to a regular school or to graduate. Next is the plan itself. The first column, it shows the need. And in this case, it could be substance abuse, it could be antisocial attitudes, or it could be anger. But these are the areas where you would list the need. The responsible party column, and that's where you would put who is responsible for working with that youth. So like for this example, the youth is responsible, the family, and the counselor. And in all these cases, it looks to be the same, but sometimes it may be something else, somebody else. It may be a teacher, for example. But that is where you would list who is responsible for carrying out this particular need. Next is the method, and then, like it says, just check all that applies. So these are just check boxes, so you can just check if it's individual methods, group counseling, or even family counseling is where you would check that. EBP is the evidence-based practice. And so in this column here, it's the, it shows what are some types of practices that you might list here, such as cognitive and behavioral interventions, motivational interviewing techniques, relapse prevention planning, and so on. It's just, it's anything that will work, and it's typically going to supposed to be anyway that it's research-based, it's evidence-based. Like what are your, what are the techniques that you're using to help them with their particular need? So the next page then goes on with the goals. So in this case, it is goal 1, John will develop the skills he needs to be drug-free. So that goes with the first need of substance abuse issues. So again, you check, is it a family goal or is it an individual goal? And then it says if checked, tasks associated should be related to the family counseling. So here's where you would list the tasks. So typically there'd be like 3 tasks that could be aligned with that one. So in this case, identify the needs met by drug use and develop other positive ways to meet those needs. Number 2, identify, challenge, and replace self-talk that supports drug use with positive self-talk that builds on your strengths. And then number 3, with input from your family, develop a relapse prevention plan that will help you stay drug-free. So, so this is written as if you're talking to the youth. Goal number 2, John will accept responsibility for his behavior and follow the law and show honesty and care for others. So this one goes, of course, back to the antisocial attitudes area of need. The task here is identify how pro-social behavior can help you reach your goals and improve your relationships now and in the future. Complete 3 or more pro-social actions each week and talk about what happened. Identify how you can change or add to your peer group and activities to increase pro-social activities. And then with your family and counselor, develop and follow a plan to support pro-social behavior by negotiating supervision, expectations, and rewards and consequences. Goal 3, John will regularly demonstrate a pro-social response to angry feelings. And of course that goes with anger is the need. And then there, in this case, 4 goals here: identify anger patterns during sessions, and as homework, practice 2 or more techniques to calm down, challenge and replace self-talk, and then with family and counseling, develop a plan to work together to support your new goals. And then, excuse me, then there's a signature page that follows. The juvenile parent mental health staff would sign that if there is a JSW, and then there's room for other. And then at the bottom, there's the licensed behavioral health professional. And remember, we changed that from QMHP, and now it's just the licensed behavioral health professional. All right, so that is the expected treatment plan that you're required to use on that. Cindy, I can't tell if there's any questions at this point before I move on to the next one.
We do have a lot of people asking if you would be able to share this presentation with them.
Oh, yes, certainly.
Okay.
So, and then maybe after the session, then I could send these out. Would that be the best way to do it?
Yeah, you can send it to me, and okay. I'm going to ask everybody who would like a copy to put your email on the chat box down there, okay. Or just send me an email at cynthia.held@eku.edu, and I'll go ahead and put my email over in the chat box too.
All right, very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next one that I'll show you, this plan, this is the, if I can find it, I know it's a little bit sometimes tricky to get to. It'll just take me just a minute. Okay. Well, anyway, I can't see it up here right now, but I can send that to you too. It's just the review plan. Hold on a sec. Maybe I can find it this way. Okay, well, I'll be able to send that to you. The review plan just looks very much similar to the other plan. So
Okay, if you're having trouble showing something and you need to show it, you can try to email it to me and then I can share it.
Okay. All right.
Otherwise, you just choose whatever screen you want to see.
Okay. Okay, so the next one, this is the day treatment discharge or transition plan. This one is like a one-pager, and this is the one that I would require facilities to use, programs to use, because it is a short one that I'm looking for signatures to have on there. So here you'd put the name of the day treatment at the top, the youth name, the age, date of birth, the current address, zip code, race or ethnic origin, gender, and then the county of residence. The name of the day treatment transitioning from, so that could be like after you're leaving your program, so you just put your name again, and then the name of the school transitioning to, or if they're exiting, you could just say graduation. The current grade, and then how many credits that they do have at this point. Now, I mean, if they're middle school, of course, they won't have any school credits yet, so you just leave it blank or just put 0 in there. And then date of anticipated transition. So again, this is happening before they actually transition, so you might have a date like 10 days out when they actually do transition. The progress or reason for release from day treatment, just go there. And then recommendations such as school placement, or if you want them to continue with some kind of counseling services, then you would put that down there. And then signature of staff would go right there. Okay, any questions on that form? Okay, again, I'll be sending those out through Cindy. I'm sorry that just it seems like it's a little bit hard to manage on trying to find all of my documents that are up here. Okay, here's what I was looking for. This particular form here, this is a day treatment transition form also. And this one says this can be planned, can be developed during treatment and prior to change of educational placement. So, and then at the very top, it says this form is to be completed during the admission of the youth. And so at the very beginning is when you can start this plan to work on the transition. So the date just would be the date that this plan has started, student name, date of birth, and grade, and then date of educational placement. So that's in the placement in your program, and then anticipated discharge date. Now I will add here before you you'll start taking notes on this one. This one is a recommended form. I'm not requiring this one. So if you have a form that you use that works just as well or better, then by all means go ahead and do that. But I want to point out that this one is one that you could use. It's pretty extensive, and so I don't expect you to have this all completely filled out, but it is a good plan to follow if you want to use that one. So it talks about pre and post assessments. You can put that in here for reading and math, their current schedule, current behavior that they're having, issues that they may be having, a contact person of the transition of the student when they do enroll into the new student, who is the contact person. If they have vocational goals, you can put that. ILP goals can go there next. Career inventory, if they have a particular area of interest, that could go there. The mental or physical health areas, their goals, they could be put there. And then completed what the learning or treatment plan may be for that student, expected outcome, and then a section for all the treatment team members that have participated in this particular plan. Then it goes on to the academic and vocational mental health areas, academic strategies, And these are just check boxes here, so you could just complete if you have those. And then, so this one says academic strategies. Next one's during academic placement, during treatment, and then health and mental health, and then on exit.
Greg?
Yes, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Deb has a question in the message box. Does that need to be completed if a youth leaves unexpectedly?
In those cases, you just document that the student did leave and there wasn't a chance to complete the documents as expected. And the other form, the previous form, that's where I would still require to document that it was left unexpectedly and there wasn't a chance to plan out this particular exit. And then that documentation will be fine. Okay. Follow-up, success completion of the program. So, and again, this is just a plan. So 2 months following that completion. So after they leave the program, 2 months after to follow up, see how the youth is doing, and can be a couple of things there to consider if there's any other school violations and so on. 6 month follow-up, and then 1 year follow-up. Okay. So that's it for that plan. Any other questions on it? Okay, so next I will be going over completing the treatment team and the progress summary form. Okay, so I'll blow this one up a little bit here. Okay, so this again is a recommended form to use. So I wouldn't require this, but it is a pretty good form to be able to use to document your weekly treatment team meetings and the progress summaries. So again, your basic information will be up there top, the youth name, date, and the week of that particular treatment. The name of your facility goes there. And in the progress, and there's some notes in there about progress that is in the treatment team to be summarized in relation to the particular goals that are identified on the youth IEP, not IEP, ITP, individual treatment plan. It is not necessary to account for every goal, because you may not be working on each goal each week, but you will be working on at least one of those goals during that week. The term data, like we would say that data should include all the evidence upon which you assess what the assessment that you're assessing of that particular youth's treatment. The assessment, that should reflect your opinion regarding the youth's progress or the lack of progress. And then plan should include a brief statement of action to be taken during that next week. And this is to help assist the youth in achieving the goal that to get to the goal completion. The problem or goal, you just check that box for which ones that they're working on this particular week. Behavior summary, so that could be just a couple of things about behavior during the individual session. You know, how was the youth during that session, receptive, so on. Group counseling, how was he during that time, during the treatment team. And then finally, collateral family. And a lot of times if the family isn't there, or if they're not seeing anybody else, you can leave that one blank. And of course, there's other if somebody else is there that is not listed. And then the goals or counseling summary would go next, just like we talked about it up here about the data, and then about what the plan is. So the plan, then what's the action that you're taking today? Here you could put school performance after that, and then any disciplinary consequences that may have happened that week. Any other special privileges? This part, escape AWOL precautions, basically it's really more about at a youth development center, what happens if they go AWOL. Of course, if they could always leave your program too, just walking out, so that could be a place to put that. Phase just means what phase they might be on, any days that are added to a phase, and then again, the tentative discharge date. Now this part on the dates of counseling services, this would be important to put the dates down. So you have down your dates of counseling during the week, and then when was your individual counseling, when was the group counseling, and then family or collateral. That means that if you had contacted them, then you could put that date right in there. And so remember, you need to contact the family at least once every 14 days. So that'd be a good place to put that. Treatment team held, what day was that? And then the treatment team members that were present during that time. And then right at the end, person completing the form. Okay, any questions on that one? All right, next, this one is I'm going to be talking about is the template. So when I say template, this is the form that I use when I'm doing a monitoring visit. So this past year, when working on these, updating these particular forms, it came to a point where I had to look at what was required. In other words, what was in the interagency agreement, and then for DJJ operated programs, what was in policy. So we have some DJJ policy that is required just for DJJ programs, and then the interagency requirements go with the contracted day ones. So I found the need to have to change and make those a little bit different. And so this first form, this is a contracted day treatment form. And like I said, it's a little bit different than the DJJ operated ones. The top part basically is the same, just who was there, the names of the individuals that were being monitored, entrance meeting and notes for that section. And then we get down to section 1, the intake. And then some of these, of course, look very familiar: photograph, intake information, rules, policy signed by youth, and so on. All release forms, verification rights. A lot of that looks pretty much the same as we've done before. Emergency medical information should be included. Number 9, that's for youthful offenders. So that's only if they are, of course, there's not very many of those we would have, but that's where you would check it if they were a youthful offender. Section 2 is the classification and education. And here you put in any notes of classification. That just means what's determined, any determination of data and documentation for this particular youth in their transfer to your program. ATR, the administrative transfer request, that is if, again, a DJJ youth that would apply to. Vocational assessments, and vocational then, because that's changed a little bit on how you do assessments from career scope to some other things that people are using, but that has to be done within 10 days of admission. The learning styles inventory, the social needs assessment. In the education area, should be a subsection on that one that is in section 2 called education. And here you would put academic assessments, and then this has to be done within 10 school days of admission. Grades, credits, progress reports, ILPs, and all that would go there. Some questions came up that if you have some reading and math scores that are done recently, like within that quarter, you can still use those scores and just bring those and place those in there. But if the youth hasn't had an assessment done in a while, since the last quarter, then go ahead and assess those students. Any mental health records and procedures. So if they don't have any, then you would check not applicable. Same as substance abuse. If they don't have those, it would be not applicable. The new one this year is a suicide risk factor screening. So every youth that comes into your program has to have a suicide risk factor completed on them. The next section 3 of the individual plan, and this is where the orientation treatment plan goes, and that's another form, and I can send that out too. ITP conference that must be held within 10 school days of the enrollment. Tasks and interventions that are aligned with goals, and that's what we just went over on those ITPs. The family counseling, and if that is indicated, then you would you wouldn't have to check this box. But if it's not there, then you just put NA there. Transition plan is initiated, so it is started, and so there should be some kind of evidence of that transition plan there. And then signed by a licensed behavioral health professional. And here's where I would put the date of when that person signed it. The ITP date corresponds with date on MMR report, so I usually ask for that report when I'm going through it. And then a copy given to the youth and the youth's parent. 60-day reviews are completed within the time frame and with complete documentation. The parents receive that notification, and the treatment team meeting is held 30 days prior to the youth's transition or discharge. And new this year too, the transition plan completed 10 school days prior to the transition or discharge. So you must have the meeting 30 days prior, and then the plan completed 10 days prior to that discharge. And again, like we said, the question that came before was if they left unexpectedly, then you just document that they left and you didn't have time to do a plan on it. Section 4, this is treatment team signature sheets and all the documentation that should be completed within 7 days, like of that particular meeting. Individual counseling documentation, like we went over the dates, the content and participation, and that should be done within 7 days. But also, we also put in there a statement about including trauma-informed approaches. Evidence-based, we talked about that earlier. This was included in the interagency agreements this year.
Greg?
Yes.
We have a question from Kimberly Miller. She said, do LPCAs count as licensed health professionals?
I believe that they do. If the LPCA, is that what she said?
Yeah, that's what she said.
Licensed professional care, healthcare professional. Yes, as long as they're licensed, and it's a little bit more broader. I mean, that's why we opened it up more. That it was the QMHP was pretty limiting, so we opened it up to be a little bit more on that one. So, so yes, hopefully that helps answer the question. Okay, number 4, documentation of contact with family, and that should be done at least every 14 days. Again, if it's difficult to reach that parent, just document that there was attempts to contact that parent. JSW notified, again, if this is a DJJ student, otherwise put NA there. Collateral contacts, NA, and then sanctions, if they weren't any, then NA. Section 5, this is for any incident reports, other behavioral reports, and then a subsection called miscellaneous for other correspondence and documentation. And if they completed a grievance form, you put a copy right there. Section 6 is a legal section. Again, this is probably only for DJJ, but occasionally there could be legal documentation for other youth. So there's a place for that. So youth records or YLs would go. Judgment or commitment orders would go there, or any other court documents you would place there.
Hey, Greg, we have another question.
Yes.
From Sandra Pittman, she asked, due to COVID, some of these in-person meetings were not held. Weekly contact with parent and student has been done and documented. Will we just document that COVID prevented these meetings, or how do you wish us to handle this?
We can, in one of the areas at the end of this, towards the end of my presentation, I have some question and answer documentation, but what we would say is that if you needed to do that online, over the phone, you can do that over the phone. If you have, any other electronic ways of communicating, then that would be fine. And electronic signatures are acceptable. Okay. The next section are the standards. And I'm not going to go through each one of these. I may hit a couple of ones of these particular standards. They're pretty much the same. I think there's a couple about how we talked about suicide prevention, that was included in there. Let's see if there's anything else. Let's see if there's any other reports, any other special incidents, and just like the last one, 8.11, the statewide child abuse hotline number and the National Human Trafficking Reporting Hotline should be displayed in the building. And that's consistent with KRS. Okay, so everything else is pretty much the same on that as far as documentation. Are there any questions on that documentation?
None in the chat.
Okay. All right, so next section is just where the scores are kept and how many possible points. And then the final percentage surveys, and then I'll do 8 youth surveys, and then however many staff surveys. I usually just have every staff complete a survey, but that's a summary of those reports. I have included this year collateral contact. There's a collateral survey, so that's just if there was any collaterals in the building, or sometimes even there that week, I might leave some forms that you could send to me after that. And then this section is the exit conference section here, and I'll put notes on there, or if there's any other improvements that are needed. All right, any questions on it? Okay, as I mentioned, this is the DJJ form for DJJ operated ones. We only have 6 across the state here, so it's very similar, but it's a little bit different. I'll try to pinpoint those really quickly. Like, we still have the 60-day reviews, 120-day reviews, 180-day reviews. Those are pretty much the same. Yeah, this particular section is pretty similar to the other one, to the contracted one. There's just a few minor differences in there as far as that checkbox. The standard section, this one has changed quite a bit. And the reason for some of these changes in standards is that we also have another area of DJJ called our quality assurance branch. And they also go out and monitor. And a lot of things they're monitoring are very similar to what we were looking at. So we wanted to streamline this a bit and not be, not have been looking at the same things. So we took some of the things out that we didn't need to look at, and so you see that it's quite a bit trimmed down. Yeah, so there's, so you can see that we only have like 24 points in this particular section, so it's cut down quite a bit. And then there's the points possible. Same thing on the surveys. We do the exact same thing with there's youth, staff, and collateral surveys are the same on those. Okay, so let's go back here. That's pretty much it for the forms that I wanted to go over and share with you. And so, and I'll go over a couple of other minor things here, like the best practices for a monitoring visit. And then I included, of course, the contract, the day treatments, and the DJJ forms, talked about the differences with those ones. So, but basically for a good monitoring visit, as you've seen that I'm looking for all those documentation to see that they're there and in order. So the best thing to do is have those sections clearly marked so that I can find them easily and look at your documentation and go through those. And when I look at the individual treatment plans, I am looking for specific goals that will match to their specific need. I think that what's really important is that when you really do a good job with the goals, it's really going to help that youth improve in those particular areas, and then that you're providing evidence-based practice. So those are the areas of particular interest to me, is to make sure that we're providing that for the student. Of course, the educational part of it is very important as well, but I do know that we also have Title I that monitors, KEXAC monitors, so there's other people that are also looking at the education part of it too. So, but there are times that when I look at a survey that there may be something from the surveys that I might help to, that may help improve in your particular program. So those things are about it. The only other thing to mention is about the trauma-informed piece. Secondary trauma is the trauma that staff feel when they're working with populations who experience or have experienced trauma. So as a principal or a leader of your building, you may want to be aware of what your staff may be feeling and then provide some extra support for them. And you do this by being encouraging them, give time, or some ways to re-energize them, but just also just being aware of that. You might recognize their behaviors and what they're saying. And I just want to make sure that when they're working with the youth, kind of like what we've seen with our guest speaker this morning, how important it is to be positive with the youth. They've already experienced a lot of trauma and they need somebody they can trust, and then somebody that will encourage them. And so that's what I encourage you to is to be aware of those kinds of things, and of course with your staff and with your teachers. And this past year, when I've been out monitoring before, we went out on the COVID-19 in March. But I've seen some really good programs that are out there doing some really great things. So I just want to encourage you to keep it up. And I know the work is hard, but it's also encouraging to me to see that kind of work that's going on out there and making a big difference in the lives of our youth. And these, one of the main points about day treatment programs is that even though they may not all be DJJ youth there, you're also helping to prevent them from becoming a DJJ youth. You're dealing with their behaviors before they get out of control, and you're getting them back onto the right track. So I think that's a very important part to remember.
Greg, we have another question.
Yes, go ahead.
And also I want to thank Tammy Roberts because she's been answering a lot of questions in the chat as well. So thank you for that.
Right.
But Jeremy Doolin has a question. He says, is there any specific guidance regarding program requirements for phase advancement if the student is 100% virtual for the upcoming school year?
So let me ask to clarify that. So if they're going through phases, are you wanting to adjust that phase approach because they are online? Can you help clarify that?
Yeah, I was just wondering how, because typically when they're in school, there's certain requirements to get through to the next phase. A lot of it's based on like their point sheets for their behavior. If they're at home, we necessarily won't have, like a point sheet for them because we won't see them. We won't know 100% what's going on with their behavior, So I was just wondering if there's any way to like basically still have someone be able to work through the phases if they're not in the building.
That's a very good point. I think it's one of the issues that we're having to deal with when you are working in an online environment, is that you're going to have to adjust those phase systems to be able to meet that. And I don't know if that's going to come from, talking to the parent about how they're doing and are they progressing, are they getting ahead, and those, I think that has to be worked out. Those are things that we haven't had experience before. And coming up to this new school year, some places are back to face-to-face, but not everybody has, not every district has decided how they're going to do it. Some of yours may be still going NTI days and would still have to meet those virtually. So I don't have a real clear answer for that, but it just would be that you're going to need to adjust those particular goals to be able to meet that from home.
Greg?
Yeah, Anthony?
Go ahead. I think Ms. Roberts was trying to come in.
I was just going to say, for us, our district made a contract that parents and students have to sign to do the virtual option. And then we have an addendum, because if they come to me because of behaviors or school-related issues, my contract is going to say, until you come in person and meet those goals in person, you might be successful academically, but you can't meet behavioral goals if you're not physically coming to school.
So they would have to be at school to be able to meet those goals.
Well, I mean, some of our kids come like with an ILPA through our regular schools, and part of their requirements to go back to regular school is that they do certain things in the classroom, respecting the teacher. And those are things that you can't monitor if they don't physically come to school. Right. They may progress academically, and we can do maybe something with that. But I think to monitor behavior, they have to physically come.
Yeah.
I agree with both Ms. Roberts. One of the things that we did with our point sheet is change it from a leveling point system to a completed, partially completed, or not completed system. And we're making them check in with the teachers on the hour. So we have seen some behavior data if they're not participating in class well, this or that. But we did make the decision for a couple of our students who were upper level, who did very well during this NTI time, that they would transition back to school, and we feel comfortable with them. But the majority of the students will have to come back when we come in person.
Okay. All right. Thank you both for responding to that. That's helpful.
Greg, we have another question in the chat.
Yes.
Deb asks, on the 180-day review, does the original ITP need to be re-signed by all parties?
Yes, and you can do that electronically. Okay. So just in the few minutes that we have left, I just put down a couple of COVID updates and some questions that came up. So since students haven't been in person since March 13th, would you like us to proceed with their timelines? And so my answer was, yeah, you were asked to stick with the timelines as agreed upon in the interagency agreement. If a student has not had any contact in the last 30 days, then you need to start a new one, a new treatment plan. And then the 60-day reviews are still required, but reviews may need to be completed online or over the phone. If you feel that you need to adjust those goals if necessary, then go ahead and do that and update it. Question, what about reviews that come due from after March 13th until today? Well, when getting back into your regular routine, if there is a regular routine, you may need to start with a new ITP and just start from that point on. But you certainly will want to do the ones that are overdue and get those reviews done now. Question, do we add the student who re-enrolled during the closures to the MMR and any others if they return? The answer here is you will keep the student on the MMR for up to 13 months. So what you would need to do is put the end date for when the student left and then create a new line for when the student came back, and then there would be no end date until they left again. All right, so are there any questions from any of you that we can help answer?
I don't see any in the chat right now, but if you have any, go ahead and unmute yourself and you can ask away.
So my contact information is right there. You can email me or give me a phone call. My phone number is 502-229-2584. And I know this is a really difficult time to be able to try to manage and work through this, but we'll do the best we can. And I wish you all the best. All right.
Thank you, Dr. Finkbonner.
Welcome. Thank you, Cindy, for your help.
I just want everybody to know that I got all the emails that people sent me or email me. And once I get the presentation, then I will email it out to all of you.
Very good. Thank you.
I just want to also remind you all that we have one more session today. And it is it's the featured session, so it's everybody together, and it starts at 1:45 and ends at 3. And we're actually going to have our SACSO awards presented then. So we hope to see you all there. And I think that's all if you're.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You all have a good day.
All right. Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you.